Do you actually want to do this or not? Do you actually want to do this or not? Because if you actually want to do it, what's going to stop you? Nothing. And if you don't really want to do it, what's going to stop you? Just about anything that comes up. Just about any obstacle that gets in your way becomes an excuse. It becomes a reason. It becomes a rationale for not proceeding down that path.
Don't walk through the world looking for evidence that you don't belong, because you will always find it.
Yes.
Don't walk through the world looking for evidence that you're not enough, because you'll always find it. Our worth and our belonging are not negotiated with other people. We carry those inside of our hearts. I know who I am. I'm clear about that. And I'm not going to negotiate that with you, because then I may fit in for you, but I no longer belong to myself. And that is a betrayal I am not willing to do anymore.
Welcome everyone to episode number 208 of the State of Fitness. Want to check my levels here. Looks like my mic is on. It's all good. Episode number 208. Today is May 1st, 2024. Thank you for joining me. I hope you're doing well. If this is your first time joining me, I'm David Greenwalt. I am the founder of Leanest Lifestyle University. For now 25 years and counting, I've been using science and experience to help our clients get to and live at the healthy weight they choose, whatever that may be, in the body and with the fitness they desire so they can live their best lives. For first-timers on these states of fitness, I discuss anything weight management oriented, anything health or fitness oriented that's top of mind for the week. The State of Fitness is my 208th since February 5th of 2020, when I promised before COVID came in that I would do 5 lives and we would see how it goes. Anyway, COVID came and we did a bunch. So we're still going, 208. All right, for student members, I'm gonna be posting top students' pictures and all kinds of accolades on our Facebook group. But because this subject is an open invite for anyone, I made it public. I wanna make sure that I get right to it and get right to the subject. So there's a lot that I'm gonna be going through. There's a lot of material here. Spent a lot of time on this, all right? So here we go. This week's State of Fitness is all about food and how it helps or hurts our mental health. So first, I want to ask a question. Okay, here we go. What if you can improve or fix mood swings, absent-mindedness, brain fog, anxiety, negativity, chronic woes me, and at least mild forms of depression with something 100% within your control and completely natural? Would you be interested? If so, you're in good luck. And if you're not interested, well, stay tuned and see if it gets more interesting pretty soon here. Hopefully it will. If you're brand new with me, you're totally forgiven for not knowing the 15 nutrition principles that make up the framework of our Leanest Lifestyle food plan. Otherwise, you should be, if you're a member and been with me a while, you should be intimately familiar with them, or at least on your way to being so. Nutrition principle number 1 of the 15 says, at least 95% of what I ate and drank was real food, or my weight is right where I want it, and at least 90% was real food. So first, you can see that neither scenario, fat loss action mode as we call it, or maintenance, requires 100% compliance to be successful. This is because perfectionism is a booby trap. It sets up unnecessary feelings of failure for being human. Instead, we strive for exceptional, which we could also say is excellence. It leaves room for human error. It leaves room for correction. It leaves room for the realities of living life, living the human experience. Next, if we're striving for excellence, we need to know what real food is. So real food is whole or minimally processed edible parts of plant and animal. Okay? Whole or minimally processed edible parts of plant and animal. The food is the ingredient. Chicken thigh, beef, apple, asparagus. The food is the ingredient. If anything has been added to it, it is only whole or minimally processed ingredients commonly found in kitchens. Things like spices, vinegars, and oils. That's real food. Ultra-processed foods, UPF, I'll be abbreviating, UPF, are most often everything other than real food. Not always. I'm generalizing a bit. I get it. But ultra-processed foods are most often everything other than real food as defined, as you see there. Why do I have this tenet to eat real food in the first place and in the first position of the 15 principles? Because real foods will help you to achieve and maintain a healthy mental state, which is what I'm going to be talking about tonight. Real food will help you increase energy and work capacity, to optimize hormones for health and metabolism, to heal and support your gut, to strengthen your immune system and reduce autoimmune disease risk, to reduce inflammation, to break free of substances designed to foster addiction, to reduce nutritional confounding variables. I'm not going to get into it, but what is a nutritional confounding variable? It's just something that when you stand on the scale and it doesn't do what we think it should, we're scratching our head going, why? Why did it do that? Especially when we really have great self-awareness. We don't have any, blind spots. We're not lying to ourselves, but we really have been on the straight and narrow for, a week or whatever. And then the scale doesn't do what makes sense. That's a nutritional confounding variable. A lot of times impacted by a nutritional confounding variable. It'll reduce that. Real food will reset your palate so that real food tastes good again. A lot of times it's only hyper-palatable junk that is satisfying when our palate has become adjusted to nothing but ultra-processed food. And real food will help to optimize metabolic function, which optimizes fat loss. So this week's topic is a focus on real food's ability to help us achieve and maintain a healthy mental state. Without trying to muddy the waters too much, I have to at least say that at least 3 of these real food benefits contribute to achieving and maintaining a healthy mental state. They include heal and support your gut, reduce inflammation, and break free of substances designed to foster addiction. Remember, I proposed to you at the start of this week's lesson a what if. I said, what if you could improve or fix mood swings, absent-mindedness, brain fog, anxiety, negativity, chronic woes, me, and depression with something 100% within your control and completely natural? Would you be interested? So, swapping out ultra-processed food for real food is that natural, 100% completely within your control action that can help you achieve and maintain a healthy mental state. Beyond fat loss, beyond body recomposition, beyond correcting metabolic disturbances, beyond reducing cancer and cardiovascular disease risk, beyond all of those. Swapping out ultra-processed food for real food can help you achieve and maintain a healthy mental state. Eating real food can improve depression, reduce brain fog, improve memory, and reduce the likelihood of developing dementia and Alzheimer's disease. So why put the focus on ultra-processed food as a whole and not instead on specific nutrients or individual potentially harmful synthetic chemicals? Well, many in the field of nutrition coaching and education emphasize the relative health and safety of a quote-unquote food by the content, quality, and concentration of the nutrients it provides. Nutrients, the carbs, the proteins, the fats, vitamins, minerals, fiber, sodium, nutrients. This is what's referred to as a reductive, nutricentric approach. Nutricentric, also called nutritionism. Nutritional reductionism refers to a focus on individual food components, carbs, proteins, fats, vitamins, minerals, fibers, sodium, and individual chemicals, as opposed to a holistic approach that focuses on food habits and the relationship between diet and health, and how a food is created and what's in it when it hits a store shelf. I had to find my camera again. So with a nutricentric view, there's less consideration given to how the food was produced, what's been done to it. Okay? Instead, a position is maintained by the nutricentric folks that as long as the food is providing nutrients within dietary guidelines, the chemicals used to produce it and or that end up as an ingredient on the label deserve a designation as safe until proven beyond a reasonable doubt that they are not. Over the past decade or so, however, evolving research recognizes the importance of nutrients, and individual chemicals. But beyond nutrients and individual chemicals, research has moved well beyond this nutricentric view and toward a holistic exploration of food processing on all-cause mortality and the development of non-communicable diseases such as obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, cancer, and depression. A growing body of evidence is showing that the processing techniques used on many foods available in supermarkets today may be just as harmful as consuming too many sugars, salts, and fats. Let me say it again, that the processing techniques used may be just as harmful as consuming too many sugars, salts, and fats. The authors of the study here, published in Public Health in 2021, the title is Upstream and Downstream Explanations of the Harms of Ultra-Processed Foods in National Dietary Guidelines. They stated the most harmful aspects of many processed foods go beyond their nutrient content, extending to other aspects of the food quality and its role in the wider food environment. They further state, poor health outcomes are not adequately explained by the consumption of individual processed foods, but rather the intense availability, affordability, palatability, and marketization of processed foods that's driving overconsumption, displacing healthier foods, and contributing to a food environment in which making healthy choices is increasingly challenging. These ideas are driving a paradigm shift with calls to move away from attributing blame to individual consumption and lifestyle factors, and instead focusing on toxic exposures and environmental risk factors attributable to overconsumption of ultra-processed foods. All right, so where are we so far? Where we are so far is here. First, fundamental nutrition principle number 1 of my 15 principles for healthy living is to eat real food at least 95% of the time if you're in action and at least 90% of the time if you're in maintenance. And this tenet is a number 1, and it's in the number 1 position purposely, as it is, in my opinion, because it's a first priority. Next, I've proposed a what if to you. What if you could take control of your mental health, improve mood, memory, cognition, reduce the risk of depression, anxiety, dementia, and Alzheimer's disease by engaging principle number 1 to the best of your ability? Again, exceptional, excellence, not perfection. Next, I said that I believe in what emerging research is finding, which is that we need to move beyond a reductive approach, look beyond specific nutrients and the individual bad boys of synthetic chemicals, and toward a holistic approach which asks us to consider how much ultra-processed food we consume and how processed the food is. So these are the foundations of, I'll call it my hypothesis. Okay? So on the topic of nutrition and mental health, there was a segment on CBS Sunday morning some time ago that caught my eye. This segment had to do with how what you eat impacts how you feel mentally. So here you go. Check it out. I'm going to play it.
Has science conclusively proven you are what you eat? Not yet. But it is finding evidence suggesting that what you eat may help determine how you feel. Susan Spencer reports our cover story.
Let's see what else you got.
So this is a shot from Japan, and this is
Globe-trotting photographer Dave Krugman feels at home no matter where he is in the world.
This is in Taiwan, actually.
Taiwan. You always take your camera with you.
Yeah.
But he hasn't always felt comfortable inside his own head. You've had issues with depression?
Yeah, in my life I have.
Even as he was building an Instagram following of about 300,000.
It wasn't matching up with the way I was feeling about life, which was like that I wasn't enjoying my day-to-day life, really. I wasn't.
He tried therapy, then antidepressants, and finally ended up with an unconventional psychiatrist who posed an unconventional question. Did he ask you specifically what you ate?
Yes.
What do you eat for breakfast, lunch, dinner?
Yeah, we definitely went through it.
And thinking about what he put in his mouth really opened his eyes.
It made me realize I would just eat whatever popped into my head at that moment.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'll go get some ramen. That sounds great. And
Chocolate cake.
Yeah. chocolate cake.
What's the matter with that?
Food is medicine. Food is brain medicine.
Psychiatrist Drew Ramsey is Dave's doctor.
In your everyday life, the number one factor that you have control over in terms of your mental health, it's at the end of your fork.
His specialty is the Daily Special and how it affects your mind. Dr. Ramsey calls this growing new field nutritional psychiatry.
Do you treat food as you would a drug and say, this is your prescription for anchovies? And how does it work?
All of my patients have a sense of foods that I want them to be eating more of.
Those foods, you guessed it, the Mediterranean diet. Colorful vegetables, seafood, olive oil, and lots of leafy greens.
Okay. So I like the name of this new field of study called nutritional psychiatry. What we eat so greatly impacts our brain and mental health. I think it's high time there was a field of study dedicated to how consumables impact it all. So I cut the segment at the Mediterranean diet part because I want to briefly tell you what the Mediterranean diet is, okay? So based on the Mediterranean diet is based on the traditional foods that people used to eat in countries like Italy and Greece back in 1960. Numerous studies have shown that the Mediterranean diet may be beneficial in the prevention of heart attacks, stroke, type 2 diabetes, and premature death. There is no one right way to follow the Mediterranean diet. There are many countries around the Mediterranean Sea, and people in different areas may have eaten different foods. Generally, on the Mediterranean diet, it's suggested you eat vegetables, fruits, nuts, seeds, legumes, potatoes, whole grains, herbs, spices, fish, seafood, and extra virgin olive oil. They want you to eat in moderation these things: poultry, eggs, cheese, and yogurt, and eat only rarely red meat. Don't eat sugar-sweetened beverages, added sugars, processed meat, refined grains, refined oils, and other highly processed foods. So, should we all run as fast as possible to the Mediterranean diet? Well, let's consider something first. Chicken and egg. Chicken and egg here, right? Are the health and longevity benefits attributed to those who follow or strongly follow a Mediterranean diet a result of eating specific food classes in specific quantities, or are researchers, for lack of a better way to describe it, using a Mediterranean diet as a proxy for the benefits of eating real food with very little refined sugar? Who knows for sure, right? No one can say. What I'll posit is there is no one right way to do a Mediterranean diet, but every variation of it is heavily tilted toward eating real food while keeping added refined sugars to a minimum. The same can be said for the framework of the nutrition plan that I provide and promote at LLU. It provides in every way the consumption of real food and promotes consumption of quality proteins, whole grains, healthy fats, fruits, and vegetables with very little refined sugars. All right, let's do the next clip.
We have some sauteed kale here.
That's Samantha L. Creef, a trained chef who works with Dr. Ramsey.
Now, this is probably my favorite brain food on the table because these are purple sweet potatoes.
Together, they
Okay, so what's up with these purple sweet potatoes? Okay, so purple sweet potatoes, they're rich in vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and fiber. They may promote the growth of a healthy gut. They contain anthocyanins, an antioxidant that's been found to slow the growth of certain types of cancer cells in test tube and mice studies, including those of the bladder, colon, stomach, and breast. Consumption of them may improve brain function. Anthocyanins may protect the brain and improve learning and memory by reducing inflammation and preventing free radical damage. So, like discovering the Mediterranean diet, we've now got a new best food friend to cure depression, right? Well, no. Like the Mediterranean diet, it's fine, probably even good. But let's look at this a bit more maturely and less reductively, shall we? Instead of focusing on a single food like purple sweet potatoes, let's eat the rainbow. What's that? Well, eating the rainbow is eating fruits and vegetables of different colors every day. Why? Because focusing on eating a variety of colors will increase your intake of different nutrients, in other words, vitamins, minerals, phytochemicals, to benefit various areas of your health. When you eat the rainbow, rather than focus on a single vegetable or fruit or any single food, it keeps you clear of reductionism. What's reductionism exactly? Reductionism is giving more weight to a singular element as it relates to the whole than it deserves. I'll say it again. It's giving more weight to a singular element as it relates to the whole than it deserves. I'm not saying purple sweet potatoes are not good. I bet they are for most. But let's not give them or any single food more credit than they deserve. Let's stay away from reductionism. Let's eat the rainbow. Let's go to the next clip.
Showed us how to make Thanksgiving better for your brain. Oysters, anyone?
Well, Susan, someday maybe you'll like the oyster.
I thought you were going to give that to me.
No. A lot of people don't like oysters.
Right.
They're these raw, slimy, scary things that maybe make you sick if you don't eat it in the right month.
Exactly.
Food fear.
Would you ever sit down and eat a cheeseburger and fries?
Well, I wouldn't eat a cheeseburger because I don't really eat that much meat and I don't eat dairy, but I would eat like a salmon burger with collard green wrap or something like that.
Have that all the time. Yeah. One of my staples.
Unlike cheeseburgers, Dr. Ramsey says oysters have unique nutrients, making them one of the best foods for depression.
Why can't I get these same nutrients out of a multivitamin?
First of all, oyster date night is incredible, and salmon date night is incredible, and fish oil and supplement date night has never really been much fun for me.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. So very briefly, what are the benefits and risks of eating oysters, since they went down that path? Oysters are packed with essential nutrients such as protein, vitamins, minerals, and omega-3 fatty acids. They're particularly high in vitamin B12, zinc, and copper. Eating raw oyster meat poses a greater risk of bacterial infection, leading to symptoms like diarrhea, vomiting, fever, and even more rare but serious conditions, including death. Oysters may also carry viruses that can pose health risks. They may contain chemical contaminants, including heavy metals like lead, cadmium, and mercury. The CDC recommends that they only be eaten cooked. What about oysters specifically for depression? Well, according to a 2018 study published in the World Journal of Psychiatry, who had as one of the authors Dr. Drew Ramsey, who you just saw, the same doctor in that Sunday morning segment, they found 12 antidepressant nutrients relate to the prevention and treatment of depressive disorders. Folate, iron, long-chain omega-3 fatty acids, EPA and DHA, magnesium, potassium, selenium, thiamine, vitamin A, vitamin B6, vitamin B12, vitamin C, and zinc. The highest scoring foods were bivalves, such as oysters and mussels, various seafoods and organ meats for animal foods. The highest scoring plant foods were leafy greens, lettuces, peppers, and cruciferous vegetables. Bottom line message I want you to take home here again, avoid reductionism. The assignment of greater importance of a single element than it deserves in relation to the whole. Let's not give oysters more street cred for depression than they deserve. Depression is very complex. So let's approach it nutritionally, at least from an eat real food model, with very little refined sugars, more of an eat the rainbow model, not an oysters and purple sweet potatoes to the rescue model. Let's watch the next clip.
There's an idea that people have that we can just take supplements and be healthy, and that's simply not true.
What can you say conclusively about the impact of food on depression?
Very conclusively, food impacts your risk of getting depressed.
And some recent research seems to back that up. In one study of people diagnosed with depression, a brain-healthy diet added to standard treatment relieved all symptoms in about a third of the patients. As for criticism that the science still is inconclusive,
The evidence has really just started. We've not had any randomized clinical trials about food in the treatment of mental health until 18 months ago. So this is very new.
Given all the emphasis on food, what role do you see for antidepressants?
Antidepressants are a great treatment for depression.
You see the two as complementing one another.
The two complement each other perfectly. This one for sure.
while the doctor writes the prescriptions, the chef makes the house calls.
Do you ever go so far as to physically take patients to the grocery store and say, this, not this, this?
Absolutely. I go to their homes and cook with them.
If you still find this whole brain food thing hard to swallow, neuroscientist Lisa Mosconi at New York City's Weill Cornell Medical College says the proof is in the pictures.
When you look at a brain scan of somebody who has, say, the Mediterranean diet, and somebody else who doesn't, can you look at that brain scan and literally see a difference?
Very often, yes. And this is a very healthy looking brain.
The brain on the left belongs to a woman on the Mediterranean diet. The other one to a woman who eats standard Western fare, high fat, high carbs. It shows actual shrinkage with likely cognitive decline, Mosconi says, and she blames our lousy American diet.
Okay, I totally agree with Dr. Ramsey in the clip when he said conclusively that food impacts your risk of getting depressed. The voiceover in the segment says the standard American diet is high fat, high carbs. That's true, but it's still reductionist. The standard American diet is 60 to 90% ultra processed, a highly refined chemical shitstorm, if I'm just being honest and plain spoken here. It's not just high fat, high carb. The synthetic chemicals added to the food or used in processing and the processing of the food as a whole matter. The standard American diet really is sad. Food for thought, they again mention the Mediterranean diet because there is no one Mediterranean diet, as I said, but every Mediterranean diet is heavily tilted toward what? What is every Mediterranean diet heavily tilted toward? Real food, very little refined sugars. So I propose that researchers, authors, and influencers are using Mediterranean diet as a proxy for real food plus very little refined sugar benefits. Is it the addition of nutrients from mostly low processed real food, or the subtraction of toxins and endocrine disruptors as someone moves away from the sad standard American diet? Most likely it's both. Let's play the next clip.
You tell me yes or no if somebody who's thinking about their brain health would eat the following.
Okay.
French fries.
No.
Ice cream.
No.
Bacon.
No.
Ooh, that was painful. Fruit Loops.
No.
Don't laugh. Pop-Tarts.
No.
Pizza.
No.
How about anchovies?
Yes.
Oh, good. Yeah, it is amazing that I'm here.
All right, so the neuroscientist is no for every ultra-processed frankenfood the segment host brings up. But you know what? I also care about my brain, my memory, and mental health, so let me answer her questions. So start off with the first food, ultra-processed, whatever, French fries. She said no. I'm going to say yes if they aren't a trigger, if I'm progressing toward my goal, or my weight is right where I want it, and they don't push my overall intake of ultra-processed food over about 10% of my total intake when I look at the past 7 days. Okay, let me say that again. French fries, yes, if they're not a trigger, if I'm progressing toward my goal, or my weight is already right where I want it, and they don't push my overall intake of ultra-processed food over about 10% of my total intake as I look at the past 7 days. Ice cream. She was a no. I'm a no, but it's because I'm lactose intolerant and I hate the gas and bloating. If I weren't lactose intolerant, then yes, if it's not a trigger, if I'm progressing toward my goal, or my weight is right where I want it, and it doesn't push my overall intake of ultra-processed food over about 10% of my total intake when I look at the past 7 days. Bacon. She was like, ooh, no. Yes. I'm a yes. If it's not a trigger. If the pork, I'm going to go a little further here on the bacon. Ideally, if it's not a trigger, if the pork is pastured and raised right, we eat what they eat. If an animal's not raised right, if an animal isn't farmed in a way that's healthy for them, then we eat them and it's not as healthy for us. So this is an ideal situation here. But yes, if it's not a trigger, if the pork is pastured and raised right, if it's uncured, and I don't exceed 1 to 2 servings a week with my weight behaving in line with my goals. I'm a yes on bacon. Fruit Loops. She was a no, of course. I'm a no, but only because I don't like them. Otherwise, yes, if they aren't a trigger, if I'm progressing toward my weight goal, or my weight is already right where I want it, and they don't push my overall intake of ultra-processed food over about 10% of my total intake when I look at the past 7 days. Starting to see a trend here, right? Pop-Tarts, she was a no. I'm a no, but only because I'm no longer driven to them. Trust me. I used to love them as a kid. But I'm a no right now because I'm no longer driven to them. Otherwise, yes, guess when? If they aren't a trigger, if I'm progressing toward my goal in the way that I want, or I'm already at the weight that I want to be, and they don't push my overall intake of ultra-processed food over about 10% of total intake when I look at the past 7 days. Pizza. For me, hell to the yes, but it still needs to not be a trigger. I need to be progressing toward my goal, or my weight needs to be right where I want it. And I need to make sure that I don't push my overall intake of ultra-processed food over about 10% when I look at the past 7 days of eating. So look at the phrasing I've been using to determine if an ultra-processed food is something that I'll eat. And of course, when I say something I'll eat, it's something that I would ask that you use, or suggest that you use as a guideline as well. When is a UPF? Okay, well, it can't be a trigger, because if it is, then 1 bite is too many and 1,000 may never be enough, okay? You need to be on pace. So I need to be on pace, progressing toward my weight goal if I'm in action, or my weight is right where I want it. And I don't want the ultra-processed food to push my total ultra-processed food intake over about 10% when I consider everything else I've eaten for the past week. I think when people of nutritional expertise or medical influence adopt the rigidity the neuroscientist you just heard did, she loses 99.9% of the audience, and with no good reasons. Sure, if having 1 piece of pizza meant I was going to suffer brain damage, mood disorders, early onset dementia, or whatever related to the brain, then I would not have it. But that's not the case. It's not the case with any of the ultra-processed foods she claimed to be a hard no on. Let's play the final clip.
Except for those anchovies, that's mostly stuff Dave Krugman won't go near today.
Waking up, having like eggs and some avocado, I definitely just have more energy throughout the day.
What about antidepressants? Are you still taking them?
No, I'm not taking medication for depression right now.
Your medication is breakfast.
Yeah, exactly. My medication is very good Italian olive oil.
All right, I have no doubt whatsoever that what we consume has a huge impact on our mood, depression, cognition, memory, and overall mental health. So we're rolling along here. I'm going to get into some research now. Worked hard on kind of pulling all this research in. I'm just scratching the surface for what I'm about to present, but I want to review it with you with regard to the subject of ultra-processed food and mental health research. It'd really be just wrong, and I probably wouldn't sleep well if I didn't at least share this data with you right here, right now. So just stay with me if you will. I'm just going to hit you with some of these highlights, but there's just a lot. There's so much out there in this field now. In the last few years, there's been so much research done on ultra-processed food and all-cause mortality, ultra-processed food and mental health, and so many other areas. So here we go. Okay, let's see. This 2017 study was published in eBiomedicine, part of the Lancet, and it had this to say. Given the very large burden of illness imposed by mental disorders and the evidence supporting the importance of nutrition to mental and brain health, it will be critical to continue to liaise with key allies in public health to advocate for policy change to improve the food environment at the population level, and to develop knowledge and capacity within clinical settings to promote the benefits of dietary improvement for those with mental illnesses. Next one, published in BMC Psychiatry, titled Prevention of Depression Through Nutritional Strategies in High-Risk Persons, Rationale and Design of the Mood Food Prevention Trial. They said, one potential mechanism linking depression and obesity is an unhealthy diet. Consumption of processed foods such as fried foods, refined grains, and refined sugars is associated with both depression and obesity, while eating a more traditional, here we go, healthy quote, here we go, Mediterranean-style diet, rich in fruits, vegetables, legumes, olive oil, fish, and whole grains, is associated with reduced depression. These findings may suggest that more unhealthy food-related behavior is linked to mood states. And as you've heard me say multiple times, there's that Mediterranean proxy for real food again. That's my position, standing on it. Firm. There we go. And the next one here, nutritional psychiatry, the present state of the evidence. They said, the new field of nutritional psychiatry provides evidence for diet quality as a modifiable risk factor for mental illnesses. Recent systematic reviews examining the association between diet and common mental disorders have shown healthy dietary patterns to be inversely associated with the probability of or risk for depression. Such diets are characterized by the high intake of vegetables, fruit, whole grains, nuts, seeds, and fish with limited processed foods. Next up, Integrative Mental Health Part 2, the emerging paradigm of nutritional therapy. They said, randomized clinical trials and epidemiological studies have shown that the quality of an individual's diet is related to his or her risk for common mental disorders and treatment outcomes. A traditional whole food anti-inflammatory dietary plan, what do you know, they didn't say Mediterranean. A traditional whole food anti-inflammatory dietary plan that consists of whole grains, complex carbohydrates in the form of antioxidant-rich vegetables and fruits, lean white meats and fish rich in omega-3 fatty acids, in addition to the elimination of refined carbohydrates and processed foods, provides the body and brain with essential nutrients that afford resiliency against the pathogenesis of mental health disorders. From the same piece of research, as previously indicated, inflammatory mechanisms have been implicated in the pathophysiology of depression. It has been clearly demonstrated that both depression and anxiety have the ability to enhance the production of pro-inflammatory cytokines. A variety of factors seem to increase the risk for the development of depression, which appears to be associated with systemic inflammation. These facts include, but are not limited to, psychosocial stressors, poor diet and lifestyle, obesity, alterations in gut permeability, poor sleep, and vitamin D deficiency. More from the same research. Although the brain accounts for approximately 2% of the body weight in terms of cellular mass, it consumes the greatest amount of energy in our body. The brain also contains the highest number of mitochondria, the organelle powerhouse located in each cell, which may contain between 200 and 2,000 or more mitochondria. The function of the mitochondria is to generate food energy into chemical energy in the form of adenosine triphosphate, ATP. Mitochondria are extremely sensitive to nutrient-deficient, highly processed foods that are high in sugar, deficient in omega-3 fatty acids, and high in artificial ingredients such as monosodium glutamate and aspartame. Mitochondria are also vulnerable to inflammation and the toxic damage of oxidative stress. Studies link depression and brain aging in general to mitochondrial injury from oxidative stress, which can be precipitated from poor diet, hormonal imbalance, gut dysbiosis, and stress. In summary, from this piece of research, nutritional therapy is an emerging paradigm in the treatment of mental health disorders, which focuses on the relationship between nutrition, brain neurochemistry, brain function, and behavior. Current evidence supports the recognition that dietary habits, nutrition, and metabolic mechanisms that include inflammation, microbiota imbalance, oxidative stress, and impaired mitochondrial function are important variables that affect brain function, mental health, and ultimately mood and behavior. Same research, part 3, Integrative Mental Health, part 3, the emerging paradigm of nutritional therapy. They said, there are a number of studies that demonstrate that ultra-processed diets characterized by high levels of sugar, refined carbohydrates, and salt and often devoid of micronutrients, are associated with an increased risk of mental health conditions such as depression. Randomized clinical trials and epidemiological studies have shown that the quality of an individual's diet is related to his or her risk for common mental disorders and treatment outcomes. Therefore, in the treatment of mental health conditions, a nutritional diet should be considered as the foundation for other interventions such as cognitive behavioral therapy and medication. Next up, published in Endocrine and Metabolic Disorders, the title, Dissecting Ultra-Processed Foods and Drinks, Do They Have a Potential to Impact the Brain? While further research is essential, preliminary evidence point to UPF consumption as a potential detrimental factor for brain health and eating behavior. In this piece of research, published, where is it published at? I don't know where it's published. I'll find that. It's on there somewhere, but I don't know where it was. But it was published, and the title is Western Diet as a Trigger of Alzheimer's Disease, from Metabolic Syndrome and Systemic Inflammation to Neuroinflammation and Neurodegeneration. They said, globally, about 47 million people were living with dementia in 2015, and this number is projected to reach 152 million by 2050. The most common cause of dementia is Alzheimer's disease, an irreversible neurodegenerative disorder, which afflicts around 44 million people worldwide. Between 2000 and 2019, deaths from Alzheimer's disease have increased 145%. So is Western diet UPF? Western diet, WD, is a broad term which defines a modern pattern of nourishment typical for Western societies, based on ultra-processed foods ready for consumption, made from refined substances, rich in simple carbohydrates, mainly simple sugars, salt, fat, mainly saturated fats, and cholesterol. This dietary pattern is also poor in grain, fiber, and the content of mono and polyunsaturated fatty acids, including anti-inflammatory omega-3, 6, and 9. They said, considerable evidence has shown that the Western diet can enhance or induce Alzheimer's disease, pathological features in the brain, impair cognition, learning, and memory, both in rodents and humans. The crucial effects on hippocampal functions were assigned to 2 dietary components of fat and sugar, blah, blah, blah. This study, titled Blood-Brain Barrier Disruption, Mechanistic Links Between Western Diet Consumption and Dementia. They said the number of people with Alzheimer's disease is projected to increase 4-fold over the next 40 years. We're seeing that trend, right? With as many as 14 million people expected to suffer from Alzheimer's disease by 2050. This study, published in Nutrients 2022, Ultra-Processed Food Consumption and Mental Health, a systematic review and meta-analysis of observational studies. This June 22 study found a total of 17 observational studies were included. Greater ultra-processed food consumption was associated with increased odds of depressive and anxiety symptoms. Furthermore, a meta-analysis of prospective studies demonstrated that greater ultra-processed food intake was associated with increased risk of subsequent depression. This study, published in the British Medical Journal, 2024, February of 2024 specifically, titled Ultra-Processed Food Exposure and Adverse Health Outcomes, Umbrella Review of Epidemiological Meta-Analyses. Conclusions. Greater exposure to ultra-processed food was associated with a higher risk of adverse health outcomes, especially cardiometabolic, common mental disorder, and mortality outcomes. This one, brand new, June 2024 study, published in Clinical Nutrition, titled Ultra-Processed Food and Human Health, an umbrella review and updated meta-analyses of observational evidence. They found, they provided a conclusion that echoed what I've been saying for a few years now. And literally when I saw their conclusion, I literally said, holy shit, to myself when I read their conclusion. Here's what they said. High UPF consumption is associated with an increased risk of a variety of chronic diseases and mental health disorders. At present, not a single study reported an association between UPF intake and a beneficial outcome. That's what made me say holy shit, because I've been saying that for a long time. I have not seen a piece of research that says the people who consume the most ultra-processed food do the best in anything health related. Anything. And these authors literally said what I've been saying for a while now, and that's what caused my exclamation. They said these findings suggest that dietary patterns with low consumption of ultra-processed foods may render broad public health benefits. Whew, threw a lot at you, right? I think it's important to get some of that out there. Make sure you're aware of the research, that there's more and more and more, literally daily, weekly research coming out on ultra-processed foods and health, ultra-processed foods and mental health. Literally nothing that we want to be good regarding health span, lifespan, mental health, emotional, psychological, you name it. Nothing we want to be good gets better with increased consumption of ultra-processed food. Maybe in the moment for a minute, right? Because, you know, like I ate the donut, it felt good in the moment. But nothing when we look at past the moment is improved for increased consumption of ultra-processed food. And I just kind of want to wrap this up by telling you a little bit about me. Only a few of you may have heard this, and I'm not going to get into super detail. But I want you all to know that I am someone who has lived the impact of ultra-processed food and its negative impact on mood and low-level depression. I didn't really go all in myself on eating real food 95% of the time until maybe 13 or 14 years ago. I was going through a very rough period emotionally, and this period awakened me at why. It asked me, you know, because of the period I was going through, I asked myself, why had I been feeling blue prior to this period? Why had I been feeling blue and even depressed more than would ever make sense? And why I had been feeling this way off and on for years. I had a beautiful family, a great career, all my needs and wants were met, but still I spent more than my fair share of time feeling somewhat depressed. Back then I was more so following a whole wheat or low-fat lifestyle, right? Paying more attention, I think, to the front of the packages. That's how I say it's the front of package. You pay more attention to the front of the package, or you turn it around and look at the ingredients. Please turn it around and look at the ingredients. I was paying more attention to front of package, did read some ingredients. Still knowledgeable on the subject, but back then that's where I was. Whole wheat, low fat, front of package marketing, paying attention to that kind of stuff. And I refer to those years that I did that as, you know, the Subway diet period. I wasn't on a Subway diet, but I refer to it as the Subway diet. You know, you'd go into Subway, you get a 6-inch whole wheat sandwich with their flubber chicken. And then for increased protein, double the flubber chicken. Get a bag of baked Lays or pretzels, because they were low fat, of course, and then get a diet soda of some kind since it was 0 calories. Every meal that I had wasn't an ultra-processed food incident, but as I think about it, probably 40% of my eating included ultra-processed foods. So was I doing better than, you know, maybe average Joe or Jane Doe in America? Yeah, because they're probably eating 10% real food, 90%. I say 60 to 90%, but I'm going on the higher end. I think most Americans are in that 80 to 90% ultra-processed food as their entire intake. So I might have been doing a little better than average Joe and Jane, but I still had, you know, probably 40%, you know, ultra-processed food. And here's the thing. I had no idea that the ultra-processed foods were causing or contributing significantly to my depression. No clue. My wife even asked me once when I was depressed, you know, she said, and I remember telling her, she said, why are you depressed? And I said, I don't know. And I really meant it. I didn't know. Couldn't put my finger on it at all. So anyway, in going through this really emotionally draining period, I knew I didn't want to feel worse. That's for sure. I did not want to feel worse. And I was at least aware back then that some people, even clients of mine, had strong negative reactions mentally, emotionally, to certain chemicals included with or used in the production of things that they ate and drank. I also had some experience at knowing how I felt like when I'd get ready for a bodybuilding show. I come from a history of competitive bodybuilding and powerlifting. And I knew how I felt when I was getting ready for a bodybuilding show, and I would be in the final few weeks before the show, very lean, and getting, stripping off the last few pounds of fat that needed to be shed. I was eating probably 10 different foods all in. That was it. Not 3 foods, but probably 10. All of them real food. All of them real food. And I remembered, in those periods, just how much energy, focus, and clarity I had. And I thought about that. I thought, man, I had so much energy, focus, and clarity when I was in those periods, in the final few weeks when I'm all real food. It's, about 10 real foods, but it's all real food. So with the minimal awareness I had of the possibility of chemical sensitivities and the intimate awareness I had of experiencing the short-lived few-week periods when I'd eat real food to shed the last of the body fat before a show, I decided to go all in with real food and only real food. And I don't remember how many days I said I'd do it for, but I know this. 3 days in, the clouds parted. My mood lifted. Even with the emotional turmoil I was going through, my energy was up. Really made me go, it had to be a coincidence, right? It had to just be related to something positive that happened to me that day, right? It couldn't be related to this change from about 40% ultra-processed food, healthy, low-fat, and no-calorie substitute stuff to real food. It couldn't be that change, right? So after maybe a week of feeling better, I went back to maybe 30% ultra-processed food. Within a few days max, I was Eeyore again. Always a black cloud hanging over my head. I had that black cloud hanging over my head again. I thought, what the hell? Again? It has to be a coincidence. Except it must be related to some bad thing that's been going on in my life. Some sad news I got. Maybe, okay. It has to be, right? Let's try it again. Let's go back to 95% real food. I'll be damned. About 3 days in, doing it, mood was better again, energy back, cognition good, depression gone. I'm like, seriously? All right, I thought, let's dig. Let's be a detective. Let's find out what you're sensitive to, Dave. Let's get in, let's find that chemical. So I started with all the popular stuff like, we're going to get rid of gluten. We're going to get rid of gluten. I'm going to switch to gluten-free. Maybe that's it. So I did, but keep in mind that there are a ton of ultra-processed foods that are gluten-free. Hell, you can buy gluten-free brownie mixes with a shit ton of synthetic chemicals in them. And I did, and it didn't help at all. So then I looked at something like caramel color. Saw some research out there on that. Remember earlier I talked about, it's one of the reasons I want you to avoid reductionism, single chemicals, that kind of thing. I saw some research out there on the negative impact of caramel color. And I had noticed that when I ate too much of something that had caramel color in it, I'd feel a mental change toward the negative. So I eliminated caramel color. Nope. It was better not having it than having it, but it didn't fix me like going 95% real food did. All in, I played this game of trying to find out what the culprit might be specifically, and the back and forth tests between 95% real food and going back to 30 to 40% ultra-processed food probably a half a dozen times before I finally had processed my own grieving. And I had to process my own grieving over this change that was as plain as the nose on my face. Plain as the nose on my face necessary if I wanted to feel better and not be depressed. And I did grieve the perceived loss a bit. I knew it wasn't as though I could never have ultra-processed stuff, but if I had it, I'd have to really limit it to a tiny dose a day, max, or maybe once a week bigger dose. So the grieving didn't take too long though, because honestly, the difference for me mentally was big. I couldn't deny it. I really enjoyed feeling better. I still do. And also felt better knowing I was better for everyone else around me too. Let's face it, it's one of the benefits. You're not only better for yourself, you're better for everyone else around you. Being in a better mood with more mental energy and not depressed for no apparent reason can brighten more of your days. I highly recommend it. So that's my story. It's true, and since that time, 13 or 14 years ago, I've lived 90% real food at a minimum, and most days I really am at 95% real food, even though my weight is right where I want it. I used to think that wasn't possible, by the way. So if you're thinking that way, I totally get it. I used to be that. I used to think that's insane. And I think you'd have to, I used to think you'd have to be a nut to live like that. The reality is, though, I really enjoy what I eat. I do. And why would we think it's okay? Why would we buy into that modern view, so to speak, that someone is a nut because they would eat real food 95% of the time? Food most similar to what we as humans have eaten for thousands of years. When did living on 60 to 100% ultra-processed food become normalized, where eating real food is weird? You're a weirdo because you eat real food. You're an outcast because you eat real food. You got to be a health nut. You must be some kind of zealot because you eat real food. When did this change happen? Well, the answer is it happened over the past 50 or so years, maybe 100 years all in. It really hasn't been that long in the grand scheme of things when we consider the tens of thousands of years of human existence. I really do enjoy my food. If I don't enjoy my food, I don't eat it, regularly anyway. Do I enjoy what I eat to the point where everything I eat makes my eyes roll back in my head and I'm saying, oh my God, that was so good, and every bite is like that? Like you might say or feel when you eat your favorite meal or your favorite ultra-processed whatever on earth, is what I eat like that? Is that what real food does to us? No, it doesn't do that. Not normally anyway. But I also know that it's not ideal to live that way for many reasons. Striving for frequent big dopamine hits when we're trying to get these dopamine hits from dietary sources. That is not healthy mentally to do that. We shouldn't strive to get the oh my God, eyes rolling back in our head dopamine hit from every single thing that we eat and drink. I enjoy the overwhelming majority of my food in a pleasing or satisfying way, not an orgasmic way. I'm even keeled, I'm not depressed, I'm not medicated, and far more than not, I'm contented, reasonably happy. I really am. So I hope you at least now know that. Number one, it's critical that we eat real foods and avoid ultra-processed foods as much as we can. What's happened is ultra-processed foods have crowded out real food over the last 50 to 100 years. We want to switch that and just progress toward that 90%. Whatever you can do, any small baby step is going to be a positive for doing what you can. But really strive to get there if you can over time. What you want to do is you want real food to crowd out ultra-processed food, okay? Kind of number two, beyond fat loss and body recomposition, what we eat greatly impacts our mood, mental function, and risk of depression, anxiety, dementia, and Alzheimer's disease. If you're suffering from any of these issues right now, I cannot stress enough that you follow nutrition guideline number one to the very best of your ability, which is eat real food 90 to 95% of the time, all the time. Number three, the increase of mental health diseases such as depression, anxiety, and dementia is eclipsing the population growth rate. Our all-in exposure to toxins is one plausible explanation for these changes. Food and drink are only one of the many sources of toxins cumulatively that we are exposed to. As humans, we have to coexist in this world, in this environment that we're living in. I'm not going to drive myself nuts trying to eliminate and avoid every toxin that I can. But I'm going to do my best to avoid what I can within reason. Where I have the ability to control it, to do it reasonably, I'm going to do it. The more that we can reduce our overall toxin, our overall cumulative toxin exposure, I think the better that we're going to do. Food and drink is one of the ways that we can do that. Number four, the more I read and study, the more I believe that the Mediterranean diet and its many benefits are a proxy for real food with very little refined sugar. I won't get hung up on the Mediterranean diet. Anytime I even hear anybody say the Mediterranean diet, anytime I read any research or an article on the Mediterranean diet, my head just flips it to real food with very little refined sugar. Number five, a nutricentric reductionist approach that is a focus on individual food compounds. Remember, purple sweet potatoes and oysters and all that kind of stuff. that silver bullet approach, as opposed to a holistic approach, that nutricentric reductionist approach doesn't account for the impact of processing or properly consider the sum of all the dietary inputs. And we should consider the sum of all the dietary inputs, not one thing. There's no magic bullet. There's no single silver bullet, I should say. Number 6, nutritional psychiatry. It is an emerging field of research that at least considers the impact of nutrition on mental health and how it can complement traditional therapies like talk and medication. I say all the time to my clients, if you're being treated for something related to mental health by a professional, please take care of your nutrition. Please go to 95% real food so that you are giving your mental health professional treating you the best chance for success, giving yourself the best chance for success. If your brain chemistry is messed up because of the dietary inputs, eating, drinking, the processing, the chemicals, the toxins, the additives, so on and so on and so on, all in, the holistic, the whole thing, if it's being negatively impacted because of that, and your mental health professional is trying to fix you with drugs, but these other confounding factors, nutritional confounding variables that I talked about before, if they're in there still, it's going to be tough. It's going to be really, really tough. Give yourself, give your professional the very best opportunity for success by going 95% real food. Okay? Number 7, I'm not advocating that across the board eating real food 95% of the time is for sure going to fix every form of mental disorder. It certainly will not fix everything for everyone. Psychoanalysis, medications, nutraceuticals, mindfulness, all these things and more may be indicated. It's going to vary. My program at LOU builds in the ability to have ultra-processed foods as a part of the plan. And since we build in having some ultra-processed foods as a part of the plan, it's not a cheat when you have it on plan. We don't have cheat meals. We don't think of it that way when it's a part of the plan, because it is. Some ultra-processed food intake can be a part of the plan. However, it really needs to meet the 3 criteria that I mentioned before. Ideally, anyway. This is ideally. 3 criteria for ultra-processed food. Number 1, it can't be a trigger. If it's a trigger, then one bite will never be enough. So one bite is too many, 1,000 will never be enough is the phrase that is often said. A lot of times you won't stop with the one bite. It's 2, 3, 4, 5, and it just can go downhill from there. That's what I mean by a trigger. There's a very big difference between a trigger and an indulgence, a trigger and a splurge. Number 2, ideally you want to be on pace and progressing toward whatever weight goal you have. Be on pace and progressing toward that goal, or you're in maintenance. Your weight is already right where you want it. Okay? And then number 3, whatever the ultra-processed food is, strive to make sure that it doesn't push your total intake of ultra-processed food over about 10% when you consider everything you've eaten in the past week. Okay? That's it. That's it for this state of the class. Ultra-processed food, real food, and mental health. If you need anything at all, you know where to find me. And please do, or find another coach. But please find me if you need me specifically. I want to help. Any questions I can answer, please ask. That's what I'm here for. Until next time, let's focus on what we want. Let's be grateful for what we already have. And remember, it's all happening perfectly. Good night. Bye-bye for now.